Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today has been counseling and advocating for entrepreneurs, creatives, and entertainers for more than 20 years. She has presented at TEDx Orlando, talk on attorneys' perspective on creativity, has been recognized by the Orlando Business Journal as one of their women who means business. She's an attorney, an educator, program director at the Blackstone LaunchPad at UCF. Please welcome my friend, Cassi Willard. What's going on, Cassi?
Thanks so much, Biggie. What a great intro. I am just hanging out in the Blackstone LaunchPad on this beautiful sunny Friday. How's your day been?
My day's been good. It's even better now. We get to hang out and talk. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while, and so I'm excited about this.
Absolutely. I'm excited to join from the building that wasn't here when we were here.
Correct.
It's wild.
And obviously it's during a lunch break. So I always like to ask the question, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
So I have to tell you, this was the most prep I did for today. The most prep. And I have notes in my phone. Are you ready for this? I literally prepared for this as if it were the bar exam. So I have a top 4 list because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. So number 1, omelet bar has an amazing breakfast sandwich, honey egg, avocado, kind of BLT situation. 10 out of 10 recommend. Number 2, because I have a gluten allergy, so it kind of changes the world of sandwiches a little bit. Second choice sandwich, Sprouts Deli does a gluten-free sandwich.
Okay.
Gluten-free bread. They have amazing protocols. And when I was in Sprouts most recently, I had your green charity t-shirt on about sandwiches. And the girl making my sandwich looks up and had met you at a farmer's market. And she was asking, wait a second, is that the sandwich guy's sandwich? Sure, hold on. So we were talking about the picnic project and some of the other things we're working on. So that one's great. Always roast beef, provolone, loaded with every vegetable they can possibly find in the building. So good. And then huge fan out of Disney Springs of Deluxe Burger because they have some really great, cool spins on burgers. And then honorable mention to Toasted because Toasted will do a spicy pineapple burger, which is amazing, gluten-free. So
I love that.
Those are 4 big go-tos.
Those are some good ones there. I like that. I like that a lot. So I know I crammed a lot into the intro. So I want to go back a little bit. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about how did you go in my research? Originally, you weren't always going to be a lawyer. Originally, you were going to study accounting and finance at UCF.
Yes.
What made you decide to go into becoming a lawyer and getting into intellectual property?
So I knew when I was really young that I wanted to become an attorney. I was raised by educators and engineers predominantly, which was wild. So everybody in my family had some tie to sciences or education. Nobody had a doctorate and nobody was an attorney. So when I came home as a kindergartner and announced I wanted to be a lawyer, my parents kind of understandably flipped out. My dad wanted to know what they were teaching in kindergarten. He was pretty indignant looking back on it now and wanted to know where in the world was this coming from. And not only did I want to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a tax attorney, which I don't know where the tax part came from. So I got a printing calculator for my 5th birthday. I still have it to this day in my home office, but got a printing calculator. And then when I went off to college and decided to go to UCF, I was an accounting major. I was benchmarked. I'll take the master's in science of taxation. I'll get my CPA. I'll go to University of Florida. I'll get my LLM in tax. And my goal was to be a federal tax judge. And I accomplished some of those things. I did go to University of Florida. I have become an attorney, but I got into intermediate financial accounting too. Those of you who are listening, if you know, you know. Academically, I was good, but my soul was being ripped out of my bone marrow. And I looked around with the brilliance of a 19-year-old child and said, I can't do this when I'm old, which I'm now old. So that's cool. I made a good choice. My 19-year-old me knew what my me today needed. And I made a pivot. And back in the day, the College of Business had a general business major. And you could take 3 minors, weave them together, and basically make a general business degree. So that's what I ended up doing. I had so much accounting, I kept that. I went into finance. That was how I got my real estate sales license. And I also took hospitality. And that was where I met my first boss in entertainment law, because in my hometown, I had a lawyer who kind of adopted me, but he made a comment that if he lived long enough, he would be the judge because his dad was the judge, his grandfather was the judge, etc. And he gave me the biggest blessing when he redirected me to work for a local courthouse when I was still in high school to kind of see how the other half lived. And then a speaker at UCF is why I do entertainment law to this day. So you got to be open to those chances.
That's crazy that's kind of how it all kind of led. I mean, at the same time, I think it's interesting how you still kind of, there's certain things that weaved in it, but at the end of the day, and I appreciate the fact that your 19-year-old self actually listened to yourself, because sometimes begrudgingly you don't want to, because you're like, well, I'm already my feet are already in on the path or the journey, and then now you're kind of going that route. So I think that's awesome. How did you get involved? So then you became, you obviously passed the law, you became a lawyer. How did you get involved from going into education and then being like a course director originally at Full Sail to now being at the new program director at the UCF Blackstone LaunchPad?
I took about a 20-year hiatus before I came back to UCF and ended up being at the other end of University Boulevard here in Central Florida and spent 2 decades just almost at Full Sail University. So Full Sail had an opportunity that was available to launch an entertainment business degree. And that entertainment business program, first of all, for undergrad and then for grad, gave me an amazing opportunity to work with students to study entrepreneurship, business law, ethics, intellectual property, business plan development, product and artist management, all of the things. And it was entertainment focused, which is completely my heart center. I was there for 19 and a half years, did incredible things, served on a lot of nonprofit boards, did a lot of events, hosted a lot of fireside chats and panels and things of that nature. And as a side give back, I would pop back home to UCF and would chat in a class. I would visit an entrepreneurship class. I would come and speak in the Launchpad. I would coach. I would judge a competition here and there. And then the opportunity that I have now to be the program director for the Launchpad opened up. And I think I referred about 30 people to apply. And finally, a couple of them pushed on me and said, this is your job, right? This is your job. And here I am.
That is insane. So I want to chat a little bit about, because you brought it up in the entertainment, like what was it about? And I know you had a speaker that kind of got you into the idea, but what was it about entertainment law that got you so enamored with all the different forms of law? Like what was it about that kind of said, yeah, this is what I want to do?
So I think the coolest thing about entertainment law and heading the section of entertainment law section of the Florida bar twice in my past, I think it's interesting because when you get a lot of us together in a space, you start to hear common themes of we want to protect creatives. A lot of us have backgrounds. So I have background in voice in particular. And I wasn't to a point where I was getting signed by a major label, but I do have background in voice, and a lot of friends of mine brilliantly creative. My mom was an artist as part of one of the things that she did for fun and had her artwork published. So I had a lot of art and entertainment in my sphere of influence. My aunt was part of one of the beautiful choirs and sang opera and was a vocalist with the Met for a while. So because of that, it was always kind of a heart center thing in the back of my head. And I grew up in the shadows of Cedar Point, the roller coaster theme park in Northern Ohio. And being in that space, you kind of look around, and for 100 days a year, you get to experience the tiniest little bite-sized version of what we have here in Orlando, which is a little bit of magic. And then it starts to get chilly and they close. And then it starts to get close to Memorial Day and they open. So when I moved to Orlando, suddenly this whole new sphere opened because we have all the things that my hometown of 7,000 didn't have. And when I met Robert Earl, who was the founder of Planet Hollywood, in my hospitality class, and boldly went up to him again, my 19-year-old self doing the things that we wish we all would do any time in our lives, I ask, how do you do law here? How do you get the law people that do law things for Planet Hollywood? And this was back when Bruce and Demi were still together. Schwarzenegger, there was no baby controversy. Stallone was in the theaters frequently. I mean, it was just a very different time. So because of that, being in that space at that time, they were in a massive growth phase. So I onboarded and got a summer opportunity to work with them when all the boy bands were selling merch deals. They had tons of grand openings with different films. They were just absolutely skyrocketing as far as the growth of the projects were concerned, and got to work with them when episode 1 came out. Was one of the things that happened that summer. So I'm dating myself horribly, but it was definitely fun to see all the different ways that entertainment could come into play. And the biggest thing is, as an entrepreneur, you're of course creating a business, you're creating experiences, you're changing lives. But one of the magical things about being on the entertainment, art, and sports side, you're creating those milestone memories, those things that you're going to remember forever. You take a relative to a game, and that's an imprint in your brain. You know, the first UCF football game you go to, the last game that your favorite player or coach has, when you go to a concert, when you go to a play, when you go through and interact. Entertainment, art, and sports just imprint memories differently. As an educator, you want to be that legacy that somebody 20 years from now says, this person made me believe in myself or thought that I could do something. But in the art space, it's just absolutely second to none to see the impact you can have.
How, because I know you still obviously I've known Cassi. I've known Cassi now for Cassi. How, can you think about how far? I know it's been over 10 years
Absolutely.
that you and I have known each other. And I know during that time, like I've known you on the educator side, but then I also know that like, you know, you wear both worlds because you also are still a practicing entertainment lawyer. So how do you balance that? And I know I kind of have an idea of the answer because I think I've heard you say it once, but I'm always kind of curious, like, how do you balance having clients and, you know, and law practice plus also being able to do the day-to-day at, you know, at UCF and educator side?
It's tremendous time management is the first thing. But the joke I always make is, because my clients are entertainers, most of them aren't going to get out of bed until after 4 p.m. I do have a couple who are up at 4 a.m., which is a little bit of a different balance every now and then. And one of the most important things is you'll make time for things that matter. No matter what trade you're in, you're going to make time for things that matter. So if it is your heart, soul, passion, getting up at 5 in the morning or staying up till 12:30 a.m. hurts less than if you're doing a thing you hate. So finding things you love makes a big, big difference. And especially seeing the way that clients' lives have changed. One contract changes their whole trajectory, and being able to see somebody get signed to a record label, being able to see somebody on main stage of a festival, being able to go to music festivals and film festivals and fight nights and all sorts of different experiences, and knowing that you're the tiniest piece, but you're also part of the reason why that thing exists. So it's kind of a cool, different way to do it. But as far as time management wise, you got to set your boundaries, make priorities. But when you're doing stuff you love, it's so much easier.
No, I agree with that 100%. And that makes total sense. You know, it does help that some rock stars and celebrities are night owls. So at the LaunchPad, obviously I became familiar of it because of you. You guys are offering everything to UCF students, everything from like coaching, programming, pitch competitions, other opportunities to make entrepreneurships available. You don't have to be a business major. You know, it's just something that you can do, and it's all for all college students. You know, and I wanted to pick your brain because, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you, was because you've heard and seen so many pitches and seen so many successful businesses become created and come through the LaunchPad. So I kind of wanted to pick your brain, and I wanted to kind of have like, what are some of the things that you think are determining factors that are needed for an ideal business to be successful?
I love this question. And the first answer is going to be the most intangible thing in the world. You need a starter who wants it, who's hungry, who's creative, who solves problems, who's agile. One of the venture capitalists that I met years ago when I was first entering into the nonprofit space of entrepreneurship, there was a VC group and one of their leaders approached me and he said, whenever I meet a business, I take a step back. He was a big fan of the horse racing and the Derby. And he said, I always bet on the jockey. I never bet on the horse. And he said, for me, it's the entrepreneur more than the business because the idea you start with is going to evolve and look different over time. But the person whose heart center is going to be with that business as long as they're with that business. If the business goes somewhere else, it'll continue under a different drive. But that entrepreneur most likely is probably going to move to start another passion project. So to be able to see serial entrepreneurs coming through not only our Blackstone LaunchPad here at UCF, but our other 77 Blackstone LaunchPads across the country, and see a 22-year-old graduating who's starting their third business. And they're in very different industries and they're holding USPTO registered intellectual property. They're a patent holder. They're a trademark holder. They've rolled one idea out because they decided that now that it's on Amazon, it isn't as compelling, or they don't think it's a challenge because their business partner is more passionate about it and they want to move it into new space. It's wild to look back and think about all of the individuals under the age of 25 who are coming through not only UCF, but the other entrepreneurship centers all over the US and the globe, who are changing things so incredibly rapidly. And the nice part about it, this generation, not to make me sound like I was at UCF in the 1900s, but this generation has a different perspective on entrepreneurship to an extent. You have the traditional college student who, of course, you graduate, you get a job, you get a paycheck, you put money away in savings, you have insurance, you go through and get a retirement fund is the dream kind of thing, but you have the responsible job track. But this is also a generation that went through and lived the thing that none of us would have guessed, which is nobody interviewed in the past decade and said, what do you want to do in the next decade? I want to survive a plague. Like nobody had a pandemic on their bingo. So they've learned grit and resilience and those things that were popular in professional development books 10 years ago. They learned it in the most kind of back alley gangster fight kind of way of all of a sudden figuring out we have no idea what's going to happen because there's an outbreak on this planet. Go home, try and figure out how to learn on Zoom, and hopefully we'll see you back in the classroom soon, and just watch everything tumble. But they also got to see their families function in very different ways, because ultimately, no matter what their family structure looked like, suddenly they're now trapped in a box and they're getting a front row view of what do the adults do when we're gone at school? Like, hold on, wait a minute. So they now get to see, mom, dad, grandma, whoever that guardian or parent is, they get to see them front of line become the chief everything officer in the barest of ways. And if anybody was displaced, we saw it through the National Entrepreneur Center of folks who wanted to be an entrepreneur one day. COVID turned them into an entrepreneur because their company turned them into no longer an employee. So there's a lot of resilience in that space. We see a lot of students who come in who have an Etsy shop or something else that they do as a side hustle. They babysit, they dog walk, they do some other things. And I'll ask them about entrepreneurship and they'll say, well, I'm not an entrepreneur. I just do this thing and get cash from it. So some of it is also just the practicality of not necessarily putting a title on it, which is kind of a beautiful thing to see of I'm not an entrepreneur. I just tutor 15 classmates and they like hook me up with pizza and beer or something like that. And then suddenly it scopes and scales. And I'm watching a joust pitch about a tutoring company that started out as somebody who was, 5 rows back in a calc class, sweating the least of anybody in the room, going, hey, who wants to learn how to do calculus? I'll meet you at the library too, kind of thing.
I love that. What do you think are some of the things when you're I guess you've seen people leading to failure? Because obviously You're telling me success is not really, is kind of, intangible, but what about for failure? Is it intangible as well? I mean, obviously it does play the other factor. If you're not a go-getter, it's not going to go anywhere. But are there other things that you've seen that have led to failure? Like, even though it's like, holy cow, what an amazing idea, and then it just sputtered away?
We will always go through, and it's one of the things that students joke, it's the unofficial slogan of the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So if somebody comes in here and they're really passionate about making a spoon out of bamboo, okay, what problem is the spoon made out of bamboo going to solve? Well, I just really want a bamboo spoon. It's like, okay, well, as somebody who uses spoons, why do I need one made out of bamboo? Hold on. So we do a lot of focus on what's the problem you're solving. What's that vacuum in the market? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you purchase an item from a business, it is the purest and most beautiful form of investing in our economy. And when students start to think of it that way, of when you decide to go to a restaurant, when you decide to go to a clothing store, yes, there's an exchange of goods and services for currency. But at the end of the day, you're investing in that business. When you shop small, you're helping a family, you're helping an entrepreneur to be able to grow. So ultimately, it's what's the function that's going to make people come to you? What's the pain you're solving? Is one of the questions we always want our students to fall in love with, because that problem's going to change over time, most likely, whether it's technology, whether it's the economy, whether it's geography, whatever it is, there has to be that iteration constantly. The other challenge that we face is figuring out who's your target market. Who's the person who buys your thing? Because when somebody comes in and says, I have a great idea for a t-shirt company, okay, who's your target market? Everyone with a torso.
How often do you get that?
Yes, I appreciate the fact that the problem that you're solving is you want to end nudity in public. I love this journey for you, and I thank you for the work that you have done to curb the plague of, topless people in Central Florida. But with that being said, if I'm buying a t-shirt, why am I buying that t-shirt? What is the reason why I buy the shirt I have on right now versus the shirt you have on right now? What's the focus? What am I trying to do here in that space? So narrowing it down to the target market and looking to see, and I always challenge any entrepreneur, student, business owner in the wild, wherever I may be, somebody in the airport. When I was flying last week, I'm sitting in the airport, somebody was talking about business. I'm wearing a shirt that says entrepreneurship on it. They start chatting with me. They have a great idea for a thing. I start chatting with them. Who's your target market? Everyone in the world. I said, okay, here's the deal. First 25 people, what do they all have in common? Because ultimately, any business that you look at in the universe, you got to have the first 25 sales. So what do the first 25 say? Because that's going to shape and mold everything else. And even a class project that my students were working on recently, we want to market to kids. We're going to work K through 18, K through 12. Mm-hmm. So 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds. If you have ever had the pleasure of talking to a 5-year-old and talking to an 18-year-old, it is typically a different conversation. So your marketing is going to change. Your engagement's going to change. Your packaging is going to change. Everything is going to change because an 18-year-old and a 5-year-old probably aren't going to consume the same thing and have the same interests unless they've got an incredibly close relationship, whether it's business in the form of babysitter or some sort of familial connection. They probably are consuming a lot of the same stuff. So really kind of looking at that target market as well as a secondary point.
I love that. Since you've heard so many pitches. I always love I'm always a fan of when you watch like Shark Tank and they're talking about like the Sharks didn't put a bid on this person, but look how successful they missed on this one. Does anyone come to mind or anything that's like brand or business that has surprised you that you at first were like, what the? Because one thing I always tell my wife, but a lot of times, and I sometimes have to remind her like what I do, because she comes to me, she goes, why would that be a business? Like when we go around to markets and something like that, and she'll be that, and I'm like, honey, there's a market for everything. You just have to find it. But I'm just kind of curious, has there been any one of those that have kind of like totally surprised you that you're like, how is this and you're like, oh wow, like it really, I guess it is. There was a market for this.
For me, I always look back and bless. I know friends who are in that as seen on TV market, but I always think back to the Pet Rock and the Chia Pet and the Snuggie and some of the things that have hit the market, and you just kind of look at it and go, isn't that a robe just worn backwards?
Backwards?
Hold on, wait a second. But here we are with a Snuggie, and we're making tons of money. So hurrah, this is a good thing. One of the things that I always think about is back in the 90s when I was in college. I'm not sure how we didn't die of dehydration because I don't remember buying bottled water. I don't even remember really toting around bottles of water. I don't know. I mean, I know we didn't drink from the fountain. I don't know how we stay hydrated back then, but we didn't do bottled water. Now we're always constantly, you're buying bottled water. It is the weirdest thing.
Well,
It makes me think of Spaceballs with the canned air. If you remember that scene in
yes.
Spaceballs with the canned air, I always think of that with bottled water. So you're either toting around your wallet or whatever your bottle is, or you're going through and you're buying the plastic disposable bottles, whatever it might be. But it's always fascinating to me. If I don't remember buying water or buying water bottles when I was in college.
No, it was ice. It was a cup of ice water or something, but we never
Or
bought
the
any.
drinking fountain.
Yeah, or the drinking fountain. We didn't have any of that stuff. Yeah, and it's like hydration is humongous now. Like, and there's
Yes.
like, and then same thing with electrolytes. Like all of a sudden, we all need
Yes.
extra electrolytes.
Yeah.
We're
And
not. We're not.
I think the pressure to eat protein now, I saw a meme that said the pressure to eat protein is worse than the pressure for the Dare ads to not do drugs. We had less awareness from Nancy Reagan frying eggs of don't do drugs than we do now with the push of being peer pressured into putting protein everywhere.
It's funny that you said that because I actually just I was talking to my friend Amy Drew, and we were talking about like the trends of 2026, and it was fiber and protein.
Yes.
Those are like the two big ones that like highlight the fiber and like and make sure there's protein. And like I love like Chipotle's like, hey, we got extra protein. I was like, dude, you are protein. Like you're a protein bowl. Like I was like, so yeah, I always find that to be interesting. But I love the water idea. That's a great answer because I'm like, that is something that does kind of surprise me that, you know, we're obviously all in it. So you recently spoke about something that about unlocking your confidence, overcoming imposter syndrome. And I wanted to talk a little bit. Obviously, I didn't get to see it. I hope there's a recording version of this so I can listen to it. But I wanted to get from you some aspects that maybe what's holding us back to our full potential. Like, what is it about imposter syndrome? And I know because I am a card carrying member of it. I've always been a card carrying member of it. I hate that I feel that way sometimes, but I just do. But I kind of wanted to pick your brain and find out like kind of a little bit about that talk and how we can unlock some of that.
So I think the first thing I have to disclaim when I talk about this, I spent about 3 hours preparing for a 45 to 55-minute talk on imposter syndrome because I wanted to make sure I was appropriately prepared to talk on the topic for my target market. And they wouldn't worry that I didn't know what I was talking about. They wouldn't worry that I wasn't qualified on it. So I literally spent 3 hours just sulking and trudging through my imposter syndrome by leaning into my personality trait of being super researcher to make sure I knew all the stuff and all the things. So one of the things that I do whenever I talk about imposter syndrome is the first thing I always talk about is it's really interesting because when you talk to 99% of humanity, I'll give 1% exception. Everybody has things that absolutely mortify them. At the end of the day, whether it's, spiders or skydiving or public speaking or whatever it is, I don't think there's any human who just 100% of the time is like, I got this. No worries. We're all going to have that moment of pause. I had the joy, I'll put it that way, of killing a cockroach. Sorry not to offend anybody, but killing a cockroach on behalf of somebody who found one in the wild and they were having a complete meltdown. I'm not really bothered by it. I got rid of it. They calmed down immediately and they were floored. They're like, how could you do that? I'm so scared. I was like, we all have our things, but at the end of the day, that's not one of my things. So it's not that big of a deal for me. But talking and getting ready for that imposter syndrome talk, I ended up reaching out to friends in all different walks of life and said, is this a thing? How do you handle this? When do you experience this? What do you need to know? And for the first time, because I've done this talk a few times, for the first time, I asked students, what makes you feel imposter syndrome? What are things that kind of flare up for you? And it was fascinating because it was things like testing, public speaking. I thought it was interesting. A couple even put up there scrolling through LinkedIn. That's really fascinating. Okay. So then we start talking about if you could do anything at all, what would you do? If you could be anything at all, what would you be? What do you want your legacy to be? Because those are kind of deep questions that you can sit and marinate in, and you're not posting them somewhere, you're not putting them on blast. Those are things you can kind of reflect on. And when I ask students, what do you want your legacy to be? What is your dream? I love the answers because there is nothing better than being in a room with a bunch of students and saying, what do you want your legacy to be? And the first student says, I know I'm going to be successful and have a great legacy the first time get to sit on the floor of a Lakers game. That's what I want to be able to tell people when I'm 100 is I sat on the floor and watched a Lakers game. And I'm like, that's amazing. Student next to him says, hey, I want to pay off my mom's house because of everything she sacrificed for me. I want to be the one who pays the mortgage off. It's like, wow, okay. What do you want your legacy to be? I want to be able to hand my business down to my kids and know that they and their families have job security. Wow, okay. What do you want your legacy to be? I want to be the guy who ate the most Big Macs. And I'm like, that's amazing. Okay, you get a little bit of everything. It's fantastic. And then I ask, what's holding you back? And that's where it gets really interesting of what's the thing in your head that's telling you no instead of why not? Because I'm a big advocate and I am the worst influence on our team here at the university and in so many other places in my world and walks of life of talking to folks and saying, if you don't try it, you tell yourself no. If you do try it, you either have a great story for a happy hour, you get some amazing feedback and you learn from it, or you at least know that the no in your head was right. And I've taught my team the worst habit, which is let them tell you no. So when I went through and nominated a chunk of our students here at UCF for the Innovator Under 25 Award through OBJ, I reached out to everybody I nominated and said, hey, I want to nominate you. And one of the nominees said, absolutely not. And I said, I'm nominating you. No offense. This is a courtesy call. It's happening. Like you can object. You can't stop me. It's happening. And they said, don't do it because if you put me in the mix and I don't get it. And I said, I'm sending an email. It's going to a small panel, I assume. Quite flatly, if I didn't tell you, you would never know. But I needed a headshot or a resume or something for OBJ. And I said, how about this? Let them tell you no. Give me whatever it is. I'll apply on your behalf. Let them tell you no. Put them in. They got in. I was headed to the Astronaut Foundation award ceremony, their scholarship ceremony. I'm driving on the freeway. My phone is blowing up and it's that student calling me shrieking because they notify the nominee. They don't notify the nominator. So I had no clue. So I answer the phone and they are making noises that only a dolphin could understand. And I'm trying to double back going, are you okay? Are you safe? Do you need help? What's happening? And they're like, look at your phone, look at your phone. And I'm like, I'm on I-4, I'm on I-4. And they doubled back and they said, I can't believe it. I'm in under 25. And I said, I can totally believe it. What are you talking about? The one thing that's interesting, I joke, I don't suffer from imposter syndrome. I luxuriate in it because about 18 months later, Orlando Business Journal came out with an executive leader award. And I'm sitting right here in this launch pad. And one of my under 25 looks at me and says, you got to do this. And I said, it's executive leadership award. It's for like CEOs. It's for heavy hitters that are executives. It's like, Rosen's going to probably be on the list and all of those powerhouses. Bob Iger is going to be on that list. It's not for me. And sure enough, she's our senior peer coach. She's still here to this day. I won't call her out by name. She knows who she is. She looked at me and she said, well, we're all going to nominate you. And you should know that you should apply because you should let them tell you no. And literally sat here and held me in study hall while I applied. And when I went to the award ceremony, because I was one of the honored first class for that award, I took her with me as my guest. And when we came back to campus, there was a speaker that day. When we came back to campus, I brought my award in to show the team, and it still sits actually here in this launch pad as kind of a monument to let them tell you no.
I love
So
that.
I don't suffer from imposter syndrome. I just luxuriate in it because you might as well at this point kind of maneuver through this space. And there are tons of statistics, but at the end of the day, I always tell everybody, just think about what is your superpower, because if you really pause for a second, the things that are frustrating to us as humans are blessings to other humans. Kind of, they dream to have the problems that we have sometimes as individuals, and we all kind of look at each other and have that little, wisp of jealousy or wisp of inspiration, depending on how you process it. So just kind of knowing that it's worth the journey. It might be a great story. It might be a great learning lesson. It might be the reason why you curl up on the couch and rot for 2 hours and just question all of your life choices. But at the end of the day, it's just part of the process that we go through as humans.
Congratulations, by the way. That's
Oh,
that's
thank
an
you.
amazing honor. So you kind of led me to my next one that I already had, because I want to say thank you just for the mere fact of how you are as being such a connector. Like, you are a connector in multiple ways. Connector in the sense of, hey, do you know this person? Or, hey, this person may be good with this person. But you're also a huge connector in the sense of, like, even taking the time to actually nominate people to do things. Like you said, like, I think it's something that, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I really feel like, and I guess even as a small business owner, sometimes you see this as, like, sometimes it's like a very, like, hey, is anyone watching me? Is anyone, like, even though when you're doing things, and sometimes then when you do get recognized, sometimes it's like kind of like, well, how or why am I being recognized, or how is this even possible? So, but one of the things that I find amazing by you is the fact that you are such a connector, and I want to kind of have you highlight a little bit about that importance of why you should connect other people and take that time to help, connect others, and maybe even nominate and do things like this.
Great question. And for me, the foundation of it is, at the end of the day, none of us got where we are without somebody nudging along the way. None of us are 1000% trudged uphill and snow both ways kind of journeys. It's somebody who inspired you. It's somebody who informed you. It's somebody who mentored. It's somebody who opened a door, made a connection, moved you into a different space to be able to see something you didn't know existed. And that's one of the big things that's a driver for me. My grandfather always used to say that you get one spin on this globe, and you've got to leave it better than you found it. That's your number one goal. Leave it better than you found it, and you did the right thing. If you do it well enough, the fire marshal will show up at your funeral because there are too many people there, was the other joke he always made, which I thought was a laugh riot. But with that, I'm a big advocate of, collectively, we're going to move a lot faster than we will individually. And I also know when you're working at 2 a.m. on the minutia of the thing that you don't love. I know during COVID, we had some entrepreneurs who were struggling. And when I was asking what's happening, they're trying to figure out how to make their bank account work, because they're trying to figure out, how do I pay for the next 2 weeks, for the next 2 months? I start talking to them and I said, what does your business look like? What is cash flow? What are revenues? What are price points? What are pain points? Are there things that the government can do? We were doing Facebook Lives with elected officials trying to talk through things. We were doing a lot of different things with the organization I was with at that time to try and help business owners. And I would talk to an entrepreneur and they'd say, oh, well, I'm sitting on 20K of invoices, but I just hate invoicing. It's like, whoa. Let's not hate invoicing. Let's hire a virtual assistant for $20 an hour, because there is a unicorn out there that loves invoicing. There is somebody who thinks that I made the worst life choice giving up accounting because now I work with a whole bunch of entertainers and artists and small business owners and everything else. So lean into that thing that is the superpower of somebody else and be that connector in the space. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you've ever had small children around you and they don't want to eat something on a plate and you have a dog, that dog will probably take interest in whatever is going to hit that floor. So we want to think about it as kind of a much more sophisticated version of that in our ecosystem of something that's not your favorite, maybe somebody else's. And to the dog's not looking at that Brussels sprout going, man, this is a rejected piece of food. That dog's looking at it going, this is not what I'm used to seeing. And this is super cool. And I don't know what this is, but let's check it out kind of thing. We all build our life paths through different things. There are industries I look to that I literally could absolutely never do. I could never be an EMT. I would be blacked out on the side of the road in 3.2 seconds. But I'm very blessed that we have EMTs. I'm very blessed that we have people in different industries, just like folks look at me and go, I can never be a lawyer. Hold on. So we have to figure out how to interconnect in this space. And the other thing that's important to me is as an entrepreneur, it's really easy to work really hard, have huge impacts, and never celebrate. It's really hard to be in the business so much that you don't take a minute and say, that's a thing I did. And that's one of the most powerful things for me working with businesses and entrepreneurs of stand back and celebrate because we don't do that enough. You're working so hard in your business that you forget to celebrate your business. And it's one of the reasons why we have coming up at the College of Business, we have our Hall of Fame. We get to nominate UCF alumni to be honored. And when I was flying to the Toronto International Film Festival, I'm sitting in the airport for 2 hours and I start tippity typing and nominating superstars. And I am super excited and super honored because your Hall of Fame class, Biggie, actually has 5 nominees that I put through while I was traveling. And
I was wondering how many went through from you.
When I found out that your class has 5 that I have known for many, many years, and I was so honored to be able to do the calls or meet face to face and surprise the nominees that are coming through in this Hall of Fame class. And during the time I've been here, I've been very blessed to work with the Dean's Office, to work with the Alumni Association and such, to be able to have at least 1 or 2 in every single class that I have known and have seen them grow and seen them have such a great impact. And surprising you at our innovation challenge definitely was a lot of fun to be able to give you that heads up on the award, but also messaging you. I clearly remember sitting in the Charlotte airport headed to the Toronto Film Festival and telling you I was nominating you. And I don't know what your emotion was, but through DM, it felt like, what?
No, that's exactly what it was.
I don't know if it was imposter syndrome or confusion of your.
It was imposter syndrome. It was 100% imposter syndrome.
Whose DMs does she think she's in here? Hold on, because
I think she sent a message to the wrong person, is what I thought.
Right, exactly. You're like, hold on, is she sending it to Biggie the singer? Hold on, wait a minute. But yeah, to be able to go through, and it's really easy to nominate people. Truth be told, you go to the Hall of Fame form for the College of Business, you go to OBJ, you go to any of our nomination forms. It takes filling out a type form with about 10 questions. It takes enough time to watch, 5 TikToks. So because of that, to be able to go through and know that it's going to brighten days. But the other thing is just to know that recognition's there. Because especially when it comes to the College of Business, the event, if you've never been to the College of Business's Hall of Fame, it's massive. It is a massive event. It is the who's who of the community. So to be able to be in town and be there for that event and see the people who are in that room, in that space, and for them to get to meet the person behind the brand and learn that brand story and a little bit about the journey, it's tremendously impactful. I mean, at the end of the day, there are folks who will nominate and the folks who will be nominating them are their own PR team. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be the cheer squad for a lot of really cool folks who've done some amazing things in lots of different corners of the world. So I was honored to nominate you. I was over the moon when I found out you got it. I was super excited. I think I might have been more excited initially for the first like 2 seconds. And then when we were trying to figure out how to ambush you, it was making sure I didn't drop any hints just so we could completely blindside you as the goal.
Yeah, you definitely blindsided me. I was not expecting it. I pretty much, like you said it, like when you nominated me, I was just like, okay, yeah, that's great. And I just kind of like stored it as like that. Well, let's reverse. I didn't say that's just great. Like it was like whatever, because I was like, why did she nominate me? I can't believe she nominated me. But at the same time, I also kind of brushed it in like, well, I don't think anything's going to happen. And I like, or whatever. And I was like, so I just kind of let it be. And then when you told me and I got to see Tiffany and meet everybody and you guys like told me that I was going to be inducted. Yeah, it is. I'll admit it is still something that I'm still grasping. There was something that I think you said to me, and I'm trying to remember how exactly you said it, because I was like, are you sure? And I was like, and you just kind of told me, she's like, well, she's like, because I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, are you sure I should be, I'm going?
Is this for me?
Is this really for me? Like, why am I being selected for this? And I think you're like, and I think you kind of made me feel like you were like, well, if you had any questions, like you're like, this is legit. Like, this is how it is. Yeah. And I appreciate it. I wholeheartedly appreciate it. It means a lot because I do sometimes, and this is one of the reasons why I do things like I even in my own world, in my own form of fashion, this podcast and doing things, because I want to be able other people to recognize or know about other people doing amazing things, but also at the same time, I want other people to hear these messages, because then I want them to hopefully inspire someone to be able to actually do these things, take that moment to do it. I mean, it's the word of mouth that kind of helps. I mean, like I'm going to have an unbelievable opportunity, because I also, you got to ask your ask. And as soon as I got asked and I got told that I was going to be part of this, the first thing I asked was, hey, can I do a sticker pack and give to every single person in the place? I was like, all they could say is no to me. And every single person in this gala is going to get like a Deli Fresh Threads sticker pack, which I've never done before, but I wanted to do something that was themed and part of it. And it'll be a way for them to see or learn more about me or get to know my business. And I can't thank you enough, for the support and for all the love you've given me through the years. I've had numerous opportunities. Cassie's been a huge advocate of mine, and it's funny because I want to say, I think we met, you bought something from me and we just started talking and then things, and it was, you bought my GI Hoagie one, the original version of that. And then ever since then, we just kind of connected. And then she's always been amazing to give me opportunities to speak at. I've spoken at Full Sail. I've spoken at UCF at the LaunchPad. It's one of my favorite things to be able to do, just to be able to kind of somewhat inspire someone. So it definitely means a lot to me. You nominating me, but also just you giving me the opportunity and being a connector like that. And so I wanted to thank you for that as well.
And I appreciate your trust, because I have called you a couple of times and been, hey, do you want to judge an innovation competition dealing with retail? Hey, do you want to be one of the panelists for a PodFest event? Hey, do you want to, one of the nice things about the role that I have is I have a life that you sometimes forget how incredible it is until somebody else steps back and you get to see it through somebody else's world. And one of my friends who I believe has an incredible life, second to none, professional athlete, has had just amazing background. We were at an event just recently together, and he looks at me and he goes, have you ever been to anything like this before? And I said, yeah, I have. And he looks like the first time my goddaughter walked into the Magic Kingdom. And it was a major event. Don't get me wrong. It was beautifully executed, beautifully done. But for me, being in entertainment, things just hit different. So for me, it's one of those, I will always be gracious and thankful. But for me, it wasn't this like, whoa thing. For him, it was. And it was really, really cool to see that. So just having that perspective and that trust of these are incredible things that we're working on, incredible things that we're doing, but also building those connections in the community makes a big difference. And I don't know if you remember the spot off of Mills, you had a shop there for a hot second. And I went to buy the shop local shirt because it became an unofficial tradition when I was still doing my Run Disney. Because the first race I ever did, I had packed a Deli Fresh Threads t-shirt just to wear while I was at Disney. And I ended up throwing it on because it was one that was themed to the race. So I wore it that morning, which running in a 5K t-shirt that's not, a tech or dry fit shirt. I know anybody in here
Painful.
who's a hardcore runner is probably grabbing their chest, but it's 5K. We're okay. We're good. We're good. But it then became tradition for me. And I did my 5Ks in Deli Fresh tees. And I remember buying a Biggie Bread sticker and you wouldn't let me pay for it. And I was taking Biggie Bread with me to Disneyland because I was doing coast to coast. And I was scrolling through my phone. I was looking for an old picture and it popped up as one of the memories of Biggie Bread, the sticker on top of the Disneyland seal, the actual manhole cover seal. And it just made me smile. I'm like, man, that was a hot minute ago, but that was definitely lots of memories there. So I appreciate it because Biggie Brad got to do a bunch of 5Ks here and a couple of them out on the other side. But just part of that memory comes into play, and thinking back to you doing the eat ups and just the way you interact with customers and the way you build memories. It's not just a clothing company. You're building a community. I know Orlando Sentinel and others have given you shouts out for the community that you're building. And that's one of the things that I always look to emulate of how do you do this so it's not transactional? Because business can be really transactional at the end of the day. And nobody is looking at an ATM and thinking, I wonder what I should send flowers for its anniversary kind of deal. So how do you go through and build that relationship and build that community in a meaningful way?
I love that. So you said something about the event. Has there been an event in your professional experience that maybe you didn't outwardly show it, but you were like total fangirling? Like, is there something that you went to that you're like, holy shit, like I'm here. Like, this is amazing. Was there one of those moments that you had something like that? And obviously you probably kept it very professional, but you were screaming inside.
For me and for my team here at UCF, it was incredible to come to work one day in the late summer, early fall and say, question, how do employees who are faculty and directors at UCF take a couple of days to go to Toronto for a film festival? If I'd been at the other end of university at Full Sail, totally. I mean, it's a film festival, for goodness sake. It's not that big of a deal. I need to figure out how to go to Toronto International Film Festival. And I start asking around. They're like, as long as it doesn't conflict with class, there are certain things, there's ebb and flow. You take a holiday, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that serious. And then I start explaining why I'm going. And I'm going because one of my clients' projects is one of the special features, is one of the featured films, and is a massive opening. And I get on the plane, I start flying up. I'm a menace to our community because I'm nominating all these people for College Business Hall of Fame. I get to Toronto and my life becomes absolutely nonstop. And seeing that Toronto experience through friends, through colleagues, through so many different eyes of as soon as I get up there, everybody's like, who's the biggest celebrity you've ever met? Because it's a question I get asked a lot working in the entertainment industry. Who's the biggest celebrity you've ever met? And working with Planet Hollywood gives you an unfair advantage because instantly you have so many different events you're attending. I've had amazing clients, amazing opportunities, music festivals, film festivals, even in the video game industry. I mean, definitely hospitality, theme parks, etc. I've been blessed with the career I have had over the years. So I get up to Toronto and instantly am thrown in the deep end of meeting everybody under the sun. And we go into the theater for the premiere of the film, and everybody starts filing in. And Sydney Sweeney, the actress, who was cast to play my client. Katie O'Brien plays her wife. Ben Foster plays her ex-husband. You have an amazing crew. David Marshad was the producer. You had the director, sorry. You have an amazing crew. Everybody is absolutely stellar and outstanding. You have Black Bear Pictures take it on as the first domestic distribution. And I'm going in for premiere. And I look down and my name is on a seat. And it's happened before at different events of kind of equal gravity. But it's different when you have a project that you have been involved in for so long. And the thing for me, that's that pivotal memory, although seeing the film in that space with that group, in that premiere situation, is kind of a core memory. I think the thing that was even more important, and I have a video on my phone, was the next day when they had media day, I recorded everybody from the project coming out for Q&A, because the phenomenon that happened was that the talent came out, the actors came out, and people went wild. And then Christy Martin came out, my client, who's first female boxer represented by Don King, first female boxer on the cover of Sports Illustrated, survived her ex-husband trying to murder her in a Apopka, an absolute incredible story. She walks out and I'm standing there taking a video because I knew the day before everybody went more wild for her than anybody else on this team. And I'm taking this video and all of a sudden I go like this with my camera because everybody is on their feet when Chrissy walks out. Everybody goes wild. And I go around and I pan the theater and it clicked in my head that that theater is a third of the size of my hometown that I grew up in. And I sent the video to my dad and said, how the heck did I end up with this? Like, how did we end up here? Because I'm the one who negotiated the life story rights to go into the project for the final round. That was what triggered the film to be made. And I said, there is a whole lot of transactional law that went into standing in this theater right now, which is absolutely wild. And then seeing the crowd just go absolutely wild over Christy and her resilience and her grit and her underdog story and everything that goes along with it. And my dad texted me back with the name of the first mentor I had, the guy whose dad was the judge and his grandfather was the judge. And he said he would be so freaking proud. And it was just this moment of, that's incredible. That's the door that opened of somebody who his kids were at my high school. He could have just as easily said no, but he said, you have a lot to figure out, kiddo, to be able to see that journey and have that. That's one of the core memories that I'll never forget. And when I did my imposter syndrome talk, I actually showed that video. And it was interesting because some of the students recognized some of the other actors. Jessica Bohr was in the film. The cast was incredible. So some of those students were seeing the different actors and actresses like, hey, that person was in Running Man. Hey, that person was in Handmaid, or a housemaid or whatever. They're pointing to like the wow factor. And then to see Christy be the one who gets all the love for me, I was like, you're doing it right. You're doing it right.
I love that. I love that. And I will say I appreciate being friends with you and seeing the excitement and getting images and text from you during that time. And it was like, I was like, holy shit. I was like, look. I was like, this is insane. So yeah. No, that was exciting. That's awesome. I love hearing that. So I have three more questions for you. One is, if you could put anything into the universe for yourself or your career, what is it that you want to manifest? And we can do it in different parts. So we'll break it down so that way you're not getting all of them. We'll break them down bite size. What do you want to manifest for yourself?
For myself right now, I'm in a big phase of figuring out work-life balance with a little bit more life. That's the challenge I'm dealing with right now is more life. I've mastered the work thing beyond. So now it's more life of just prioritizing family, prioritizing friends, prioritizing self as well, just kind of self-care and downtime and things of that nature.
What about career?
Career-wise, I'm always looking for that next opportunity for growth of how do you leave it better than you found it. So this Launchpad has had phenomenal growth over the past 3 years. We have a team that's second to none. So Blackstone gave us a challenge to engage 10% of UCF's entire student body, which, to go back to the target market thing, to tell somebody your target market is the entire student body of the University of Central Florida, from a 16-year-old in dual enrollment taking a tennis class to somebody getting their white coat in 8 weeks, is chaotic. Absolutely chaotic. If a student came in and told me that, I would say absolutely not. Who are the first 25? Are you focusing on students who are in calculus? Are you focusing on students who live in a certain, dormitory, something like that? But it's everybody. We hit those marks. It's been wild to see the amount of growth that we have. The fact that, when you look at our metrics, our KPIs, they're second to none. So for me, it's looking at what are those next opportunities? What are the blind spots where we can make a difference? It's the student who walks in and says, I dream of working in hospitality, but I just don't know. And I'm like, grab a chair. Let's have a chat. Let's see how we can get you where you want to be. So looking at different ways to open doors, open opportunities definitely is always top of mind for me.
I love that. Okay. Those are some good, those are phenomenal opportunities and ideas. I love the fact that the Blackstone is for every single student, because, I think that just because you may not think you're entrepreneurial, or you may have an idea, and sometimes you just need that extra help. And that's something that you guys provide in so many different formats, which I think is great. Have you ever thought of a business idea? Like, have you ever, but obviously you run a business because you're a lawyer, you run a business, but I'm saying, like, have you ever thought of like a product type thing other than a service or anything like that?
So fun fact, and this is absolutely going to blow your mind. So fun fact, because I'm an educator as well, being an educator is a half, PhD tweed jacket with corduroy patches, of course. And then the other half of it is this beautiful smoothie of chaos, because you're not really a stand-up comedian, but you don't want to be the one who reads the notes, but you also have to kind of be the learner where they are. And I think one of my personal ones, right before our first home game in the fall, we were doing an ideation workshop, and we were using a piece of software that we licensed. And a student put his hand up and he said, can you build something with us? Because you're learning a piece of software where all you're building out an idea. I get it. I totally understand. So I built out the idea, and anybody who is listening to this, if you want it, I will personally connect you with business services at the University of Central Florida and help get this figured out if they can figure it out. I built a business that would deliver custom charcuterie boxes to your tailgate spot called Nuggets Nibbles. Because nugget, nitro's bestie,
horse, yeah.
Nuggets Nibbles. So I said, we're gonna build this business. Okay, what are problems? What are emotions? What are all these things? And I'm thinking, man, how great would it be if somebody would kind of deliver to my
tailgate
spot when I'm tailgating customized little boxes that would deal with allergies, would deal with preferences, would have a variety of different things, would make these like really fun little Lunchables to tailgate with. I'm not dealing with a grill. I'm not toting, all the stuff to and from my car. I can just kind of tailgate and trash it. And then I can go do my thing and watch the game. Hopefully it doesn't rain out with the first night game, keep my fingers crossed for that. But at the end of the day, I said, I'm going to build Nuggets Nibbles. So whenever I open up that software, I always start laughing whenever I see Nuggets Nibbles. And I'm like, somebody needs to do Nuggets Nibbles. Hold on. We know enough people.
This is a great idea. And I do know that in the world of tailgating, there are I've seen it, because I've seen some that actually will set up your tent for you. So why wouldn't they have something like this that will be already waiting for you or being dropped off at your tailgate?
Absolutely.
I know someone that loves charcuteries. I will talk to them, and maybe they'll work with you on that. I think I love it.
I think we can start a business here, but I am
Yes.
so chaotically creative when it comes to business, because the other thing is, and one of the students years ago told me, They said one of the things that you do as a coach, and it's a compliment I'll never forget. One of the things you do as a coach is you pick up my business like a snow globe and you just gently shake it and mix things up a little bit, because they would come in and they're developing their business and they're trying to think about what could be the next business segment, or how could I move this business in a different way for marketing. And I would always say, let's look from 4 different perspectives and let's kind of see what this looks like over time. And then from those different perspectives, it would kind of land in different spots. So I do it in a little bit of a more jarring way when I go through and create, Supreme Court theme parks and Nuggets Nibbles and things like that.
Nuggets Nibbles is, you got something there.
I think so.
I definitely think you have something there. Okay, so what advice do you have for someone wanting to start something?
So if you're wanting to start a business, one of my biggest tips is really going back to what we mentioned. What's the frustration that you're able to solve, and who is that market that needs the solution? Because it's like starting a podcast, and I give you mad props for this. A lot of podcasts start, and after about the 5th episode, the fun, shiny part wears off, and then the podcast goes dark. Being a blogger, anything that's episodic, you really have to be in it to win it, and you have to map out content and keep things moving through the pipeline. So think about what is that problem that you want to solve for a market, and how do you keep it engaged? How do you make sure it can get some good traction in that space? But also know, no matter where you are in the United States, you have so many different pieces of infrastructure. As students, we have a lot of magnet schools now that do entrepreneurship, which is amazing in the high school level. At the college level, you have a global consortium of entrepreneur centers. So more than a Blackstone LaunchPad, you have entrepreneurship centers all over this world doing amazing and incredible things. And then through our small business administration, whether it's through Small Business Development Center, whether it's through SCORE, in Central Florida here, we have powerhouse chambers of commerce that are mirrored all over the place. My little hometown, we had a Rotary Club. If anybody's familiar with Rotary Clubs, you had Rotary Club where you could go and kind of mix and mingle and network. But also just get your think tank together. That's one of the biggest things I always recommend. As a big business, you've got your board of directors. As a human being, I always recommend to get your own board of directors. And I'm very, very blessed. You actually got to meet one of my board of directors, the person that you shipped the t-shirts to that you met at PodFest.
Yes.
He's part of my board of directors. He's the person that I will call, who I deem to be my Yoda on my board of directors, because I'll call him and he'll be half super introspective and half super duper supportive. And when I talk to any starter, I always recommend, if you really want to kick the tires on a concept, call the person who will always tell you yes. Because maybe we all in our phone have somebody who, no matter what it is, I want to get a dragon tattooed on my face. Yes, that's a great idea. It sounds beautiful. What color are we thinking? Have the person who will always tell you no. Hey, I think at 5 o'clock, I'm going to leave the office today. Is that a good idea? I mean, really, you want to go home? Is going home the best idea? Have the person who will always kind of shake it up and tell you no. Have that personal Yoda, that one that'll kind of be your sensei and take you on the journey. And then I also recommend have the person who asks you why 5 times, because it is the blessing. My goddaughters are still small. So whenever I do anything, they're like, why are you going to Toronto? Because there's a movie. Why is there a movie? It's a long story. Why is it a long story? Because I'm a lawyer. Why are you a lawyer? Because of this one person I worked with. All of a sudden you're like digging through what's the why. And it's a good way to find the frustration that you're facing.
Where can people follow you? Where can people follow or learn more, especially if like the Launchpad, or give me all the socials that you want to share, that you feel comfortable sharing, where the audience to get?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, and I think my handle is Cassi UCF. And then I am more formal, of course, on LinkedIn. We have to be very business-like. So on LinkedIn, it's Cassandra Willard Esquire, of course. So you can go ahead and find me there. Those are the 2 easiest ways. I either promote or later gram, as I love to joke, a good bit of the stuff between the two. You get to see a little bit of a highlight reel. Absolutely no imposter syndrome, all love and all goodness. And if there is somewhere where I can make a connection or provide support, that's what it's all about. I'm here because of a long list of people who took a chance and looked at me and said, let's go ahead and give her the opportunity to have a hot mic or to learn for 5 minutes or sit in the back row and go, this is not for me or whatever it was. So your journey is kind of this tapestry of a bunch of different things that you've been able to incur and encounter and pull together. So if there's anything I can do to tie things together, definitely let me know.
Cassie, thank you so much for taking the time and being on the show and hanging out with me. I really appreciate it during this lunch break. I also, obviously, I can't thank you enough, and I'll thank you again in person this weekend for nominating me for Hall of Fame. It's truly an honor. But definitely make sure to check out. I'll put on the show notes her social so you can kind of follow, as well as also if you go to UCF, the LaunchPad, or if you have questions and you're like, hey, I go to this school, reach out to me. I'll see what I can do to help, or if not, I'll ask Cassie, especially since Cassie is such a huge connector. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe. If you want to support me, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.